is Pulford. I work at the Department of Administration for this gentleman in the front row over here. Wave to everybody, David. That's the state's Chief Information Officer. I'm the Geographic Information Officer at DOA, and I'm going to be telling you folks about a project that had a long history of origins, but is in process right now, and I think it has some bearing on things that we're all interested in, and I hope you'll be interested in seeing where this project is going. I'll be talking to you a bit about how we got the project started, our goals and objectives, the team, roles, responsibilities, our planning, the work we're doing in progress towards those goals, our next steps, how this matters to everybody in relationships beyond just the technology I'm talking about, and then I'll, time permitting, show a couple of things of interest in the demo. So, first of all, I should tell, since a lot of people here are not not land information technicians or geographic information coordinators, or instead registered deeds, which, by the way, I'm very pleased to make all of your acquaintance. I know about half of the people in the room, but not the other half, although at lunch I got to meet at least 4 of you, so step in the right direction. So first of all, this is about a repository and a geoportal. A repository is, in the simplest terms, just a place to store spatial information, layers, services, and that sort of thing. We're talking about a repository in the Department of Administration. We already have one, and we want to revise it and make it useful, more useful, I should say. And there are certain things that make perfect sense in a centralized repository versus the repositories that you all use to manage your data locally. There are layers that have no formal agency custodian designated. MCDs is one that comes to mind. You could say soils, imagery, for example. They are managed in some cases by people who take on that responsibility. It's not really the business of the department that's doing that. So DOA, as an agency that serves other agencies and intergovernmental relations, is a logical place for some data. And then, as you all know, we're talking about aggregation of some certain layers to a statewide view, things coming from the counties into a statewide view. Those things might make perfect sense there. And then we also work with several partners who don't have the means to share their geospatial information. They might do a lot of work on their desktop or have business data that has a locational characteristic, but they don't have the funding or the real driving need to prop that up on a server and push it out through the web for everybody to access. So in some cases, we might be a logical host there as well. A lot of people, even though we all do this, we all also recognize that the next point is that there are redundant copies of data all over the place, and in some cases it makes much more sense to share them efficiently in one place. And as I pointed out, I think, and I'll reiterate, we do recognize that lots of GIS data is best managed close to home by the custodian if they have the wherewithal and the capability of handling that. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a geoportal. Now, a geoportal, in simplest terms, again, is just a way of discovering and searching for information that can be in a DOA repository or in repositories anywhere. And the reason that this is so important is because discovery is important to lots of the people that we work with, all of us. You want to know who has the data, what it contains in terms of attributes and that sort of thing, when it was last updated, what kind of spatial extents it represents, and how you get at it. And the most important thing to most people in this room, I think, is that we're consumers and custodians of this kind of information. We field requests from people outside of our jurisdictional boundaries or outside of our agency if we're a state, all sorts of requests from the same type of information over and over and over again. And we conversely, when we're searching for that data outside of our jurisdictional boundaries, you have to hunt and peck sometimes if you're not necessarily familiar with who has it. A lot of the technical folks in our organizations know who to contact. Your business extends beyond the GIS technicians in your agency, and lots of times people just don't know who to go to. So we're looking at a kind of a central point of contact, point of all of these other repositories and storehouses of information on how to get at it. In research, like I said, this started a long time ago. About a year ago or more, I looked at the National States Geographic Information Council geospatial maturity assessment and did some searching on the web to discover that 41 other states, not including Wisconsin, have some sort of a central repository, and many also have additional functional repositories. And wherever there's more than one repository, there's certainly need for a geoportal for discovery. So that's kind of a little background that I want to hit you with. We started this project within DOA, the way all projects start, IT projects and DET, with a project charter that has several pages that I won't go into, but the important things are the objectives, which are to evaluate some technologies for both repository, updating our repository and new geoportal services. These would have to enable information discovery, storage where appropriate, and access across confederated domains. We are going to do that evaluation, then examine the workflow within the proof of concept that we are creating, and look at the resource requirements for the managed operations of this work. And the goal, ultimately, is a proposal to implement a managed enterprise repository and geoportal solution. We needed to start by getting a team formed. I could not be happier with the project team we have in place. The idea is to represent the most primary stakeholders in this, who are the custodians and consumers. And the largest of those two bodies of custodians and consumers are the state agencies and counties. So we talked to the State Agency Geographic Information Council, SAGIC up there, and got two members from that group, Mitch from DOT and Jerry from DNR, two agencies that have lots of data and lots of interest in this. We also talked to Lion and got the current president, Al, and the incoming president, Sarah. And because a lot of this work references clearinghouse and needs some sort of metadata expertise to drive it, we wanted the state cartographer's office represented. In addition, they have good outreach within the community and are valuable, certainly a valuable partner. You know that their voting representatives listed next to those. That is because if we have issues during the project and we're making decisions regarding technology, I wanted this to represent those two stakeholder groups and to have an equitable way of resolving any decisions. This is not, DOA is facilitating this project, but it's for those groups up there, actually. I also want to mention that we have additional people on the project that we get some very valuable input from. Although they're not voting members, they're vocal and have all contributed very well. The Land Information Program is represented by Peter, who we met earlier, and Vita, who's sitting over here. WLIA itself, we have members of the technical committee and the strategy committee, and that's Martin and Bill. We we're represented through the university map library by Jamie Stoltenberg, and then 3 members of my staff, or 2 members and myself participate as well. We kicked it off March 13th. We had to do some of the normal facilitation and planning. Because this group is so diverse and hard to get together, for scheduling was a bit of a challenge. We figured out a way to do our meetings mostly online and to facilitate an online discussion forum and folders for storing our materials. Based on tasks and schedule, we have a targeted completion date of August 15th, as you see. I'm responsible for, based on our work breakdown, for creating our agendas, getting minutes of the meeting, setting up the services. Lee, who works for me, is setting up a technical test bed so that we can demonstrate a couple of these products, and then we'll also compile the documentation at the end. The voting members have to do a lot of homework each week, and that involves research, reviews, analysis, and they make recommendations, and hopefully they're reporting back to the representative organizations occasionally as the project progresses at milestones. The auxiliary members that I mentioned earlier all contribute valuable opinion and offer a good voice to the project. In general, the high-level work breakdown was that we started with developing some stakeholder use cases for both the repository and the geoportal, in some cases where you need to use both of those. We're looking at our existing capabilities and the workflows that we anticipate to meet those use cases. From that, we're extracting some functional and non-functional requirements that are important in the selection process. And then we've created a equitable checklist where we can look at what our requirements, priorities are, how the products meet the needs, and I'll have another slide about that in a second here. We're looking at both open source and commercial off-the-shelf solutions for the geoportal. We will then do proof of concept testing, examine the resource needs for operations and maintenance, and create the proposals for final product. The use cases, we came up with 15, which I won't read the list of to you, but they're different ways that lay people and technical people would use the system. The workflows we've diagrammed as well for those who are public users would come through the system and make some decisions based on whether they want data or services, and authorized users and partners that we would be working with, or custodians of data in the repository, for example, may go directly to that data set through authorized access, or do some searching to get to where they want to be. Again, in looking at our evaluation of the repository components, we have some, I realize you can't see these pictures very well, so I'll point out what's on here, but some of the components we have available for a repository, and as I said, it's just simply a matter of storing spatial information. We have the box cloud service. We could do public FTP. You need ArcGIS server and SDE for some server services. File server is possible need. SharePoint we have available to us in secured FTP. We looked at all of these and came up with pros and cons based on their major, who can use them, the way they're used, the security applied to them, and data and capacities as well. And those are on the left are the basic types of uses that would be used for a repository. So then we, like I said, we boiled the use cases down into requirements list, functional, both functional and non-functional. Example of a non-functional requirement would be price. You know, it doesn't affect how the product works, but it certainly will affect whether we can afford to prop it up in GeoAir. And then, you know, things like search and performance are more functional requirements. So we, as I said, we prioritize those according to their importance, from critical to not important. And we actually dropped off the ones that existed that were not important to us. But when we get to doing these evaluations of the products, we're going to be weighting our evaluations based on how they score relative to the priority, their ability to meet the requirements, and we've got some commentary and nuance related to those abilities that when we go back and look at these collectively, we can, since some of the scoring may be very close, we want to have more information to choose with. And then we will, again, after we've done the proof of concept testing, we'll look at the operational needs and the governance and resources needs. The 5 geoportal products we're looking at are Esri's, the 3 open source geoportal products are the Esri geoportal server, the GeoNetwork product, and the CCAN product. I know those names don't mean much to you, but they're 3, well-used internationally and nationally products for geoportal work. We are also looking at 2 commercial off-the-shelf solutions, like I mentioned, ArcGIS Online from Esri, which many of us are already somewhat familiar with, and a product called Voyager, which has its roots in the federal government content management system, and they've added geospatial on top of it to then enhance the search and discovery of geoportal information. We also, as I mentioned, looked at the current repository that we've had and evaluated that as well. We've done the repository evaluation and 3 of the geoportal products. We have 2 left to do, one of which we're gathering tomorrow actually to meet. After we're done with those evaluations, we're going to select 2 to do some further testing on. Based on our projected workflows, we're going to do some functional testing on the functions, abilities, and we're going to look at performance by developing some scripted workflows and some load testing routines. Then we'll do a closer examination, as I mentioned, about the operation and maintenance needs, produce the documentation and the report, which is a recommendation of how these stakeholder groups feel they are served by this product, which one they would recommend. A couple things I wanted to talk about is, even though this is definitely a technology project, there's a lot of related things bubbling up around the geospatial community that, besides single source of discovery, there's discussions going on about government-to-government data sharing work. This could certainly have a relation to the aggregations that current Act 20 work is looking at and may look at in the future, could be made accessible through this. And one thing I wanted to point out was the state agency land information reports. I know that counties do land information reporting, and so do the state agencies. Historically, it's been done in a Word document format that's useless, except for somebody who wanted to. Useless in terms of, let me retract that word. It was certainly not useless, but it wasn't a good tool for discovery and searching and finding out the relationships across agencies. Because of discussions we've had in this forum and in other forums, for about the past year, I've been working with the state agency GIS coordinators on coming up with a new format for reporting. Our revised format requires data inventory, metadata for that data, and service catalog along with their technology infrastructure in a common format given to us in a spreadsheet that allows us to sort and do some work with it. Real quickly, here's what that looks like. So this is on our webpage, by the way, but you can see that these are the contacts, the data, the services, and the technologies. If you look at the data inventory, it's a long list of stuff. It's a step in the right direction. And this will feed a geoportal, by the way. We've got the agency, the layer names, information, a better description of it, the ISO category, tags where appropriate, and information about who the contacts are and business areas. Our goal is to make this list have a graphical interface in front of it so that it's more searchable. For the time being, it's sortable, so you could, for example, sort by the department, select transportation, and then go over here and look at categories. And transportation has stuff related to transportation and boundaries, for example. So then if you want to find out what DOT has in relation to boundary data, you've got a list of it and who to contact for more information. So it's a step in the right direction from the state agencies. Let me start again. Sorry. 1 second. I'm almost done anyways. But yeah, I wanted to point out the state agencies are starting to get their act together. They're putting their information into a common format that can feed a geoportal so that it's discoverable by the counties. Eventually, we'll expand that, make it available to others to provide information. The geoportal products, by the way, will search for services that you already have running out there, so we can automate that to some degree and discover and publish information about your site. Most people coming to the state, these, the non-techies, and I won't even go into a slideshow mode to finish here, but non-techies are people we need to be thinking about in relation to what we're doing with our information. The realtors talk was good this morning. I saw it on the agenda yesterday and was reading what they want to talk to us about, and I think they would be interested in finding who has information beyond the borders that they typically work within. Realtors don't work within a city or a county exclusively. Sometimes cross jurisdictional lines, you might not know where to go for the information. You might want to see state agency information as well. That's just one example. Certainly, geospatial data, preaching to the choir here, it's important: business, government, education, science, environment, conservation, organization, utilities, and so on and so forth. Those people also need a place to find this stuff. I think we're heading in the right direction with this project and crowd for something else. We've got a minute or two, so I want to show links. ArcGIS Online is one of the products we're looking at. Sorry, I had to do that. We're looking at ArcGIS Online, which all of the geospatial people in the audience are familiar with. This happens to be San Jose's geoportal or ArcGIS Online instance where people can discover information about what city of San Jose has. Voyager, which is one of the products we're looking at next. Doesn't seem to be working. Oh well. Yeah, they're off the list. This is the GeoNetwork product. In this case, they cropped up. I think this is. I'm using the Hotels Free Wi-Fi, so that might have something bearing to do with it. But GeoNetwork has some, with customization, you can do some nice searches, and that's another. I just wanted to give you folks a flavor of what the geoportals look like. CCAN product we're looking at, this may not be the best of their site examples, but it shows how it's actually used by data.gov, which is why one of the reasons we're looking at it. And then the Esri geoportal server is the one that we propped up a while ago in thinking about this. We did a little bit of customization just to show conceptually how it worked. Basically, you can do searches for data, you can select extents and put some keywords in there, or you can browse for data. I would have shown you some examples how you can pop up information, but you can search by content type, or you can search by categorical. And real quickly, just to show you what one might look like, how somebody would discover information. If you're interested in schools, you can see metadata about it, get more details about it, or you can, in this case, you can add it to a map viewer, which you can do it. And you can see kind of what the information looks like when it comes up. There it's coming. Anyways, I think I'll end with that. I wanted you guys just to understand basically what this project is about, which is a way to find information through the state, through Wisconsin.gov. Basically, people can come in and find your information, or they can find information in this repository if we simply make hooks to it through metadata and URLs. So the project's going along great. We will have that report done by August, as I said, and at that time we'll make it public and share it with you guys, and I think you'll want to support it when you see the results. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question. Your plan includes input to an evaluation by the department of all this data. But the contributors, those who might be putting stuff in, includes what we typically think of as stakeholders. You know, you mentioned other government agencies, commercial companies like utility, education, conservation, and environmental organizations, etc. Does the concept of stakeholders extend to ad hoc citizen groups and individual citizens as contributors?
Yes. In a nutshell, yes. The project, the focus of the project to narrow the use cases and the usability is focusing first on the primary custodians and contributors, which we view as counties and the state agencies. However, the intent is to make that information public in some cases, where it can be public, so that all of those people who are interested in this data and would like to download it, make use of it, develop mashups or whatever they want to do, can find it through one place without having to go. Their input into the development of this technology is not part of the project. I think so.
Your answer was more in terms of these other people as users. My question was this: if I were an individual citizen and I happen to discover what might be a stand of trees that go back to could I come to you and put the data in, not act as someone taking it out? Your answer was along the lines of taking it out.
I understand. I was talking more about use and discovery and access. You're talking about input into the system.
That was my question, yes.
Yes. It's a good question, and it's certainly doable. Technically, it's not a problem. It's more of a governance issue in whether you recognize this. We are developing this primarily for authoritative government data. So what you're talking about as a citizen may be part of a process to inform authoritative government data.
Well, the concept of authoritative data would include the idea that if you were the recipient of individual citizen data, and you examined and said, yes, this is appropriate for use, at that point, that data would become authoritative.
Gotcha. And Department of Administration, so there certainly is a way to facilitate the process you're talking about. The Department of Administration is facilitating the technology and the operations and maintenance of that technology. Say, for example, you want to report a bunch of potholes in your town. You may go to your city and tell them that you've got this information in a spatial format. It should be added to a layer file that is put into the repository. They, as the authoritative custodian of city data, could make the choice to put it in there. Enter the difference between what we're talking about and just a completely wide open public, what's the term for it? Crowdsourced data development system is that there are authorities and a governance process for getting the information in there. But I think any responsible government would be open to what you're talking about doing. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the team that you had, the 2 people from state agencies, you had 2 from Alliance representing counties. Why don't you have anybody from cities?
Strictly because, logistics and management of this project team, it's my belief that most counties have a good relationship with most cities, and they work across those jurisdictional boundaries. And we just didn't want to have a project team of 50 people.
2 more people from cities?
Well, if you would like to, are you a city representative?
No.
Okay. The project team would certainly not be opposed to a voice from a city. I've got that balance set up in terms of voting, but I would welcome another voice if you think it's somebody who would be contributing and could make the effort to participate on the team meeting. I'll talk to you offline about that. Any other questions? I went a little over, but I started late. Fred?
You had made a comment that there is a repository up.
There is. It's something that we propped up a while ago, and at the time, it was just used for services. It wasn't a repository for discovering data or layer files or anything else. So we created map services back when I had a little larger staff. We were taking data and making map services and publishing them. And so we have, the point of it is not that the repository that we have is the way to go, but that the infrastructure is in place and the capacity is there for, we've got production, test, and development server services. We've got all of these different types of data hosting locations, and then we have the other infrastructure that's needed to facilitate a repository. The team evaluated that technology and is recommending what would be needed to improve it and make it useful as a repository that would serve stakeholder, current stakeholder needs. So I think you're shaking your head a little bit, and I'm not sure why.
Well, I guess, we were having a long discussion about what the statewide parcel repository is going to be like, and there has been a lot of talk about the fact that there's a repository up and running for your office or state agencies in general, just to validate the repository, forget about the geoportal. Is why aren't state agencies contributing their authoritative data to a central repository so that they all have access to it? Then you can start testing how a geoportal is going to work in those types of things, but just the internal, take the 24K hydro, that's the authority, the wetlands, the soils, put that up as a service, let us push the load onto your servers and see what it's gonna be like.
I understand the question, and there's a really long.
I think your microphone went off, Bert. I think your mic went off.
No, that's fine, I just wasn't holding it. I think there's a really long answer to that. I think the point I would make is that these state agencies, some of them are very firmly believe that their repository should be pointed to in a geoportal, which makes perfect sense to me because they have the capacity and ability to prop that information up. All is needed is one place to find it and download it from. There are other agencies that we are working with who are more than willing to push their stuff into our repository. Our repository, like I said, makes sense in a couple different cases. And that's the stuff that we want to work on in the future. But pointing at various repositories is through one geoportal is the same as seeing one repository. It's just one web page that you go to and you discover DNR data, you discover DATCAP data, you discover transportation data, you discover the other agency's data who happens to sit in our repository, which happens to be like health services, and we're putting some public service commission data in there, and children and families data. So one place to find it is what you really want, right? You don't care where it sits, do you?
Well, we could have a discussion about that.
All right, I've gone over, but I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you about this more in the future.